Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LON speed ready.
Hartel, nice to be in orbit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gnomon live stream. My name is Adam Hartel. I'm going to be your host today. And today's stream is our first ever virtual open house. And it's my pleasure to host you. Thank you so much for your interest in Gnomon. Thank you for being here. Today, I am going to be sharing with you about careers in digital production for artists in the industry today. I'm going to be sharing with you about some of the different kinds of pathways and jobs and careers that industry artists are having in the things that we train, as well as talking about how Gnomon is training artists for those careers. What you just saw, if you've been here within the last several minutes waiting for the stream to begin, we've been playing our 2020 student reel. And that is a collection of all student work at Gnomon. Now, it doesn't reflect at all what they were able to do before they came to Gnomon. This is not an example of what we're expecting in your portfolio submission to enter our programs. This is to show you the caliber of artists that our school is producing. This is the work that they are learning how to do through our programs, just to be able to give you that visual. And I love our reel. It gets better and better every year. So let's get started. I'd like to get my presentation up on the screen here for you guys. There we go. So, Gnomon was started. And before I begin, I should mention that my colleague, one of our admissions advisors, Xander, is actually in the chat for all of our live stream platforms today, and he's ready to answer questions. He's there to take everything as it comes up during the course of the presentation, so you don't have to wait till later to ask a question about any of Gnomon's programs. He's one of our admissions advisors. He can answer it right there in the chat for you. Later on, when we are hearing from our admissions director, as well as our director of financial aid, we'll have an opportunity to bring some of your questions through live to them that they can answer on the stream for you. So this is actually a really great format to be able to do an open house, because it's asynchronous. You get to raise questions as you've got them. We've got people to assist you while you're watching the stream. So sit back and enjoy. Gnomon was started back in 1997. We were started by a creature artist by the name of Alex Alvarez. So we were started by an industry artist. We were kind of birthed within the industry because at that time there was a massive demand for artists who could create CG assets for film and so forth. Recent films like the original Jurassic Park had begun to set the benchmark for realistic CG in film, and now suddenly everybody wanted that kind of content. But there were very few people in the world that actually knew how to make this stuff. So Alex started Gnomon as a place where industry artists could come and train and learn these things. Since then, we have rapidly grown into being a full-blown college. We've won some amazing awards over the years. In fact, what you see on the screen right now just represents a few of the awards that we've won. The ones with the little R's above them, these are known as the rookies. And this is an international competition that the top schools in the world compete in. And you'll be able to see that we've won School of the Year a few times. We've also ranked #1 in the US for VFX, games, and animation, which is pretty much our entire curriculum. We've also ranked #1 worldwide for VFX and animation. So that's just to give you an idea that we have been around for quite a while, and we're very good at what we do. And because of that, we have had alumni that have gone on to work on some really incredible projects, which I'll get to a little bit about that later. And of course, we're going to get to spend some time with some of our Gnomon alumni that are out there working in the industry today towards the end of our time today as well. So what exactly is it that Gnomon teaches? In a nutshell, and in a simple term, it's called digital production. But this actually is a catch-all for a lot of different types of disciplines in the industry. So I want to share with you a little bit about what digital production is. Digital production essentially is all of the CG and 3D animation, everything that you're seeing going into feature films, television, games, and VR today. It's what makes, you know, our superheroes' powers possible on screen. It's what makes all the VFX possible. It's what makes the amazing animation that we see in films like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse possible. And we are seeing tremendous digital production breakthroughs happening in television programs like The Mandalorian, as well as our games, and now the massive set of games that are beginning to be developed for VR. So just to touch, like, for example, on live action feature film, you know, in film, you have a lot happening, you know, in camera, but there's also quite a lot that needs to happen after you film your shots. And that's where digital production comes in. So it's the kind of stuff that makes it possible for Spider-Man to do the types of things that he does, brings our Pokemon characters to very, you know, almost hyper-realistic life on screen in 3 dimensions. It makes it possible for John Wick to have a raging gunfight on the back of a horse running through the middle of downtown New York. You know, all of these amazing things that we're seeing happen in feature films today. In fact, 20 out of 20 of the highest grossing films of all time are all VFX heavy blockbusters or CG animated films. So digital production has basically broken open an entirely new level of entertainment, and it continues to fuel that entertainment and to raise the bar on what storytellers can bring to screen. For example, take a film like Captain America: Civil War, grossed $250 million budget. It had 2,525 credited positions. These are all people that worked on the film, guys. Half of the credited jobs were in VFX. That's just to give you an idea. For one major film, there's a massive amount of people that are being employed in the types of careers that I'm going to be talking with you about today. Let's talk about feature animation films done entirely, you know, in CG. Without digital production, we would not be able to bring these characters and environments and stories to life. And you'll remember, you know, since if you go back and watch the original first Toy Story film, it was amazing for its time. It totally broke ground. But you can watch the most recent one and even see how just in the arc of the productions of those films, how VFX continues and you know, 3D animation continues to set a new bar each time. So this is something that's rapidly growing and continuing to bring some amazing stories that you would not otherwise be able to tell without you know, 3D animation and visual effects. So you know, a franchise like Frozen has had a worldwide box office gross of $1.2 billion. The Ice Age franchise, 3.2 billion. 71,000 people are directly employed in the US in feature animation films. So again, this is to give you an idea that this is a massive industry with many, many, many jobs and many, many positions that continue to need to be filled as we continue to create more and more content in feature animation. So for television shows and commercials, VFX digital production is what makes it possible for very, very high production value in television shows like Game of Thrones. And now with, for example, the first season of Mandalorian, which I'm ready for season 2 to drop, by the way, at the end of October. But what they've done in terms of bringing virtual environments, live, essentially, 3D rendered, live rendered in the moment sets to screens that surround the actors. These are tremendous breakthroughs that are occurring. And actually in commercials, we're seeing VFX all the time. For example, 90% of the car commercials on television today are done nearly 100% in CG. Often the car is CG. They're just driving around a chassis and environment, and then they bring in all the CG elements to lay the car on top, and that gives the director, as well as the owner of the product, the ability to make their product look 100% perfect all of the time. And even in television commercials, for example, our friendly little Geico Gecko, he's of course CG. And I'm seeing television commercials nowadays use more and more VFX that are at the level of, maybe what film production was, 5 to 10 years ago. So it just continues to ramp up. And we now have these major streaming platforms that are ramping up their content. So for example, just last year in 2019, Netflix had a content budget of $15 billion, guys. That means so much stuff is being produced and so many artists are needed to create the content for these productions. The Apple content budget in 2019 was $6 billion. And this is only going to continue to grow. Even in the midst of a global pandemic and social distancing and all of that, people still are seeking out entertainment, especially streaming it at home, because that's where we are. So these industries are growing very, very quickly. And last but definitely not least, are games. And the production value on our games are continuing to go through the roof every time a major AAA title is released. And you can see here some examples of some amazing titles that have come out recently. And, for example, way back in 2016, games added $12 billion to the gross domestic product here in the US. Consumers in 2018, consumers spent $43.4 billion on games. And over 65,000 people are directly employed in the US in the gaming industry today. And I've got friends working in game studios, and games are doing very well right now because people are at home and they need entertainment, and they're playing games on their consoles. So I wanted to give some background on the different kinds of content that's being created through digital production, and to say that this is a massive industry with thousands upon thousands of jobs that are being filled. And they're looking for more and more artists to fill those needs. And that's why Gnomon is training the artists that we're training and is able to have the very, very high placement rate that we do, which I'll share a little bit more later with you. But right now, I'd like to talk with you about the production pipeline. When we say digital production, what does that mean? Well, there's a pathway, there's a pipeline to how these projects get made. And in that pipeline are different steps that require different skill sets. And each one of them can actually be a career path unto itself. So for example, towards the very beginning of the pipeline, we have pre-visualization. And this was born from what we've been doing and still do in regards to storyboards, which are two-dimensional static images that are drawn in sequence, kind of like a comic book or comic panel, to tell what's happening in a scene. Now, animators and 3D modelers are able to create sequences like this, which allows them through 3D animation to essentially not just create a static image or sequential images, but to really tell the story with simplified models, simplified animation. The point is not hyper detail. The point is getting the big picture across. So this is a great position for artists that want to do 3D and they want to work with 3D models and animate but they are really into the big picture. They're really into storytelling, and they want to work closely with the director and the cinematographer to essentially get kind of this sketch, this thumbnail, if you will, of how each of the sequences in the film are going to unfold, what the camera angle is going to be, basically all the notes that the rest of the production needs to work from to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the director's vision. Next up are character artists, and character artists do exactly what the name implies. They are actually creating the final 3D character or creature that is appearing on screen in a film, television program, or game. So this artist here is using a piece of software called ZBrush. And ZBrush is amazing. It essentially lets you use traditional sculpting techniques on digital 3D clay. So this artist here is actually sculpting out a creature that is able then to be handed off further down the pipeline for, texturing and rigging and animation and so forth. Next up is hard surface modeling. So where you would use something like ZBrush for modeling something very organic in shape, like a character or creature, hard surface modeling is typically going to be used for anything that has, well, a hard surface. That could be, vehicles or mechs, pieces of the environment, buildings, pieces of armor, weapons, and so forth. So what you see being used here is called Maya, and Maya is a mainstay and the industry standard for hard surface modeling in the industry today, amongst other disciplines as well. And it's one of our main pieces of software that we teach here at Gnomon. And you can see kind of what that process looks like as an artist begins to put together this drone, sort of this hover drone that they're making for a production. Next up, you'll see that same drone in the texturing portion of the pipeline. And this is actually where an artist gets to come in and take a 3D model. And as you can see here, they will literally get to paint on surface materials onto that model. So it's kind of like, when you get like a little D&D miniature or something like that, or a small model, and you paint it. The way that you paint it tells a story. It indicates what it's made out of. It indicates, is it brand new? Has it seen some action or some wear and tear? What kind of environment does it exist inside? All of that texturing is going to convey those things. And so this artist here is using a piece of software called Substance Painter, which literally allows them to go in and paint on the surface of this 3D model. So once you've got your texturing done, you need to provide lighting for your models. And this might sound relatively simple, but it's not. And it's an incredibly important part of the production pipeline, because just like in, say, an actual physical live action play, you need lighting artists to come in and place the lighting on the stage. You need literally the same thing in CG. And the lighting really helps to tell the story. It tells the audience where to look. It conveys the mood. For example, in the scene that's playing right here, you can see, Rapunzel and her love interest in the film. This is an incredibly important moment in the film. It's a scene where they kiss for the first time, right? And these thousands upon thousands of lanterns that were crafted and placed, and the ambience and the tone and the color of the lighting was controlled by the lighting artist to set the mood so the audience would feel the emotional impact that they needed to feel for that scene. Next up is character rigging. So let's say you've got a character modeled. That character, has been textured and painted and so forth. It's in a nice looking lighting environment, but that character's got to move. That character's got to be brought to life. And so what a character rigger does, as you can see here, actually goes in and designs a skeleton, kind of a digital skeletal structure inside of the character, and then all of the controls and parameters to make that character move in a very lifelike way. So these are the controls that the animator is going to use to move that character around and make it perform in the scene. So a very, very important role. Maybe a little bit more technical leaning, and actually, this is a great position for someone that wants to work in the industry, who is an artistic and creative mind, but also is a bit of an engineer and needs to do problem solving to get this thing to move the way that it needs to move. There's even some coding and scripting that can be involved in this process. And of course, once your character is rigged, then you can animate it. So at Gnomon, as you can see here, we teach our students 2D animation principles. We start them right at the foundational level. We make sure that they understand those principles that will always be true in animation, but then we begin to teach them how to take those and apply those to a 3D character. And really, animators are kind of like actors. They're acting through the characters that they're animating, and they're constantly paying attention to themselves and how humans and creatures move and the way things that happen in nature, so that they can bring these characters to life and get an amazing and emotional performance out of them on screen. Next up is VFX animation, which is a bit of a different type of animation, where you can see that these kind of sequences are incredibly complex. There are a lot of moving pieces of debris, for example, with this space station, a lot of particles, smoke, and so forth. And these animators couldn't go in and individually move every little component like you would animate a character, for example. Instead, because of the sheer volume of what needs to be done, they're actually using specialized software that runs physics simulations. So simulations of things like smoke, gravity, inertia, water, fire, you name it. And they're also using those engines to design their own simulations, which is why we continually see new sort of wow factor things happening in film and in games and television that we've never quite seen before, but it feels like it could exist in the real world, or at least in the world that it's being set in. And that's because these animators are, they're curious people. They're kind of like really creative engineers, and they're constantly looking at the world around them and asking questions of why that works the way that it does. And they're taking that knowledge into the pipeline and utilizing these engines to basically drive the simulations and create visually stunning sequences like this. Matte painting is actually a technique that has predated the use of computers in entertainment. It's been around for quite a while. So, for example, in the original 1977 Star Wars, there was a lot of matte painting being used, right? Because they couldn't literally build the entire Death Star hangar or something like that. Instead, the way that matte painting worked back then is, you line up your shot with the camera, and you have your piece of your physical set that was built lined up in the camera, and then artists would actually paint on pieces of wood or glass with, say, for example, acrylic paint or gouache, and they would paint stunning looking backgrounds that had the correct type of lighting and composition so that they could line it up in perspective with the shot and the physical set, so it looked like that set was existing in a larger world. Well, today we can do the same thing digitally, but we are able to bring in moving components and animation and video in the background and so forth. And so we are really building tremendously incredible worlds, and our matte painters are the ones that are kind of bringing that in to what has already been filmed to expand that shot into an unbelievable environment. Next up is compositing. So you've got all your different components and assets that have been made. You've got animation, you've got shot video, you've got all those things, but who is the person that puts it all together into the final shot that makes it to the screen, right? These are kind of like the wizards towards the end of the pipeline, that they don't necessarily make all of the 3D models and animation and still images that are going to go in the background. They take all of that and they weave it all together. So in sort of the build out you're seeing here, you've got 3D models for the environment and the buildings, texturing, lighting, actors in front of green screens inserted, a final lighting pass, and you wind up with an amazing scene that looks like it's a real place. For all intents and purposes, this could be a crane shot, or it could be a shot in the real world coming off of a helicopter or something like that. But the reason why we use visual effects to accomplish this is it saves the director a tremendous amount of time and money. Instead of scouting out a real world location that looks just like what they need, they don't have to hire additional actors. They don't have to get insurance to film there and hope that the weather's perfect. Instead, they can go to a VFX studio and say, these are the kind of shots that I need. For example, this is an establishing shot. It tells us where the story is taking place in the film. And the artists create all the assets, and the compositor brings it all together. And this is being done so realistically these days, that even friends of mine who are VFX directors, they'll tell you, like, I see stuff now that I don't know whether it was really shot or whether it was assets that were composited together. And that's because these compositors are doing such a tremendous job. And last, but definitely not least, are game engines. Because the way that you, for example, produce a feature animation film, something like a Pixar film or something like that, and the way that you produce a video game, those are very different. The way that the animation happens in those realms is very, very different. Whereas in a feature animation film, it can take many, many, many hours just to render one frame. for a scene that you need to have, 60 of those frames per second. In games, we're using game engines which allow us to render in real time, right? So as soon as the input is put into the system that tells you that a character is going to move, the environment's going to spin or something like that, all of that is animated in real time. Why? Because we as the player need to be able to use our controller and get stuff to happen right away and not wait for it to render, right? So it provides story immersion. It provides tremendous flexibility for storytelling and a high level of interactivity. And that's why games are so popular. So, we are teaching people in Gnomon how to do the production pipeline for game engines as well. Because this is what's going to be needed for an artist that wants to go and work in a game studio, creating some of the amazing games that are out there like God of War or Ghost of Tsushima or The Last of Us 2. So with a little bit of knowledge of the production pipeline and an understanding that this is vast and, how artists are kind of going about putting all these things together, I want to talk to you about our educational offerings, about how Gnomon is training students for these kinds of positions in the industry. But before I talk about our educational programs, I want to talk to you about some really important aspects of our education here at Gnomon, and that's really the environment and the culture that we immerse our students in. These are the really unique things that I feel, that Gnomon feels makes us different, makes us a unique school. And so the first of those is our instructors. Possibly one of the very most important things at Gnomon are our instructors, and every single one of them is a working industry artist. In fact, all of our instructors are required to be working in the industry in order to teach at our school. And here you can see an array of many of our instructors and the types of projects that they have worked on themselves. And so that means, if you're a student at Gnomon in the classroom, you're in the class with an instructor who's literally come over from their day job, working on a game or a film or television program, working on some aspect of the digital production pipeline. And they're coming in that day and teaching you the very types of processes and workflows that they're using presently. So that means our students are getting a 100% current education because the industry grows very rapidly, yeah? And, you want to make sure that you're learning from an artist that is currently working in the state of the industry today and using current workflows in what they're teaching. So that's one of the things that makes our education so strong at Gnomon. It also makes our student experience very strong. Another thing that makes Gnomon really unique is our alumni placement. We have an incredibly high placement rate. Just last year in 2019, we had a 97% placement rate. The year before that in 2018, 100%. And that is the percentile of graduates from our full-time programs that are finding positions in the industry within 6 months of finishing the program. And these are positions that are directly relating to what they trained to do. So we're not talking about, working the front desk at Disney or getting coffees for executive at Pixar or something like that. This is in the digital production pipeline within 6 months of graduation. And alumni placement is very, very important to us. Because of that, we have built relationships with many, many studios around the world, as well as the vast amount of studios just in the Los Angeles area. And this is an example of some of the studios that you might be familiar with who are regularly hiring Gnomon graduates. And we have some incredible graduates, and you're going to get to meet some of our alumni a little bit later on. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that panel with you. Another really unique feature about Gnomon is our campus. And right now, we have kind of two types of campuses to share about you with. The first, of course, is our physical campus, which in just a moment, I'm going to show you just a short reel of what our physical campus is like. We are located in Hollywood. We're actually on a production lot in Hollywood. It's the original production lot for Technicolor. And that allows us to immerse our students in a production environment. Because we don't want our students to be surprised when they graduate and go, oh, this is what the industry is like. We want them to be in the exact type of environment they're going to be working in one day. And so I'm gonna play this clip, but a little bit later in the presentation today, after we kind of finish the visual presentation, as we get ready for the panel, we're also going to be showing you a reel of what our student experience is like online. And that's really important right now. Gnomon had built several years ago, we already custom built an online platform for the types of courses that we teach. They're tailored to our courses. So when we had to close campus for social distancing, we didn't really miss a beat. We just took all of our classroom content, we took all of our programs and put it onto that pre-existing custom-built platform. So as a result, we have a very robust student experience. We have a very effective student experience and learning experience online. And we're going to be showing you a video a little bit later today about that. But right now, I just wanted to show you a clip of what the Gnomon physical campus is like. And as soon as we're through all of this, which I'm hoping is very soon, this is the actual physical location that all of our students will be able to migrate into once we're able to open up our physical facilities again. All right, so one of the last things I want to touch on that makes our student experience so unique at Gnomon is Gnomon events. We produce usually about a couple of industry events per month, as well as now we're doing live streaming with some informational sessions and interviews with industry artists. When we're on campus, we host all our events on our green screen stage, and it's free to the public. Anyone is able to RSVP and then come out and attend for free. But now we are actually streaming all of our events online right here on these platforms that you're watching the stream on today. And on the screen here are examples of some of the events that we have been doing, ranging from events on amazing industry projects like Avengers Endgame or the making of God of War, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but also ranging over to some really great informational sessions and resources for artists. For example, portfolio tips and tricks with Gnomon admissions. We did an amazing informational session, an interview with Ian McCaig on May the 4th this year. And our Chief Creative Officer here at Gnomon, Josh Herman, is also hosting an art jam every Wednesday morning from 10 a.m. until 1 in the afternoon. And he's an industry veteran, and he's been showing us some really incredible techniques in ZBrush, and sketching, and just hanging out with artists, answering questions, and sharing his workflow. So where you're viewing this today, we would hope that you come back and watch more content, because we want to be able to provide this free to you as your resource, whether you're wanting to learn about Gnomon or just simply learn about the industry today. As well as we have a library on YouTube of all of our past events, including events that were on our stage when campus was open earlier. And you can go through that library of over 100 different videos and watch that content and learn from it. We want to make sure you know that that's available to you for free. All right. Oh, and lastly, I'd like to invite you next week on Thursday from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. We actually have a great event coming up with Olivier Debard on creating cinematic world design. So if you're interested in that, please come back next Thursday evening at 7:30 for that. Okay, so wrapping up my portion of the presentation, let's get to the real meat of this. Let's get to, how is Gnomon training artists? What are our academic programs? Well, here's just a bird's eye view of the different academic offerings that we have here at Gnomon. So in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see we have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in digital production, a full-blown 4-year degree in digital production. To the right of it, we also offer a 2-year certificate program, which is a little bit more advanced than our bachelor's degree program. It's a little bit more akin to like a higher level education, master's degree type training. On the bottom row here to the left, you'll see we have a foundation in art design, which essentially gives you the ability to take a course that allows you to build your portfolio at Gnomon. And lastly, we have individual courses available. Well over 70 of the classes that we teach as a part of our full-time programs, those same classes are available individually to students. And right now, all of those classes are also available online. So you literally could take individual classes at Gnomon from the comfort of your own home today. All right, so moving forward, let's dive in just a little bit deeper into each of these. So for example, our foundation in art design, as I mentioned, this is a portfolio development course. It's something that lasts for up to a year. So there's 4 quarters. And what it is that, it's not something you have to submit a portfolio to get into. It's something that you talk to our admissions advisors about and register for. And it allows you the ability to learn all of the foundational art skills that we're looking for in artists. So if you're someone that wants to attend Gnomon, maybe you're coming right out of high school and you're looking to go to Gnomon for your Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. But maybe your portfolio isn't put together yet, or maybe you haven't had the opportunity to take a lot of those foundational art classes. This is a great bridge from high school, for example, into Gnomon. It's also a great bridge for any artist that really wants to do digital production, but needs some of that foundational training first. So what it looks like is, you don't have to stay in it for an entire year. You can, 1 or 2 terms, or you can stay in it for all 4 terms. But each of those terms are going to get you into different kinds of classes, starting with things like, figure drawing, anatomy for artists, how to draw in perspective, color and light theory, and then ranging all the way through to some really amazing design courses like vehicle and mech design, character and creature design, and designing environments, and all of these principles and foundational art skills are what you're going to need to build a 3D education on top of. So that's where the foundation comes in really handy, because if you're already working, if you're going to be working on putting together a portfolio to submit to apply to a full-time program at Gnomon, why not develop that portfolio under the training of Gnomon instructors, the very people that you're putting together a portfolio to learn from. Now, if you go through the foundation in art and design with a GPA of about 3.2 or higher, you will get automatically a $500 scholarship towards the BFA program. And about half of the classes that you learn in the foundation also are transferable into the bachelor's program. So it's not like you're delaying the beginning of your college education. You're actually starting into some of those courses with the possibility of receiving a scholarship, and you're building that portfolio. So it's more of like a great Kickstarter towards the 4-year program here at Gnomon. Next up is our main academic offering. This is our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So yes, this is a fully accredited, full-time 4-year program. All of the necessary general ed classes and things like that are fully built into the program. So it's everything that you need to learn the digital production pipeline, to become industry ready, and to come away from that training with a full Bachelor of Fine Arts degree under your belt as well. So, of course, under normal circumstances, it's going to be on campus. It's definitely going to be full-time. You can also start the bachelor's program online today, because our entire program has been moved onto our online platform. And it has an optional concentration in game art. So earlier I was sharing about game engines and how, working on a production within a game engine is going to be a little bit different than doing it, say, for a feature animation. So what that means is you'll be learning the digital production pipeline, which applies, to everything. But if you choose that optional concentration in game art, you'll also begin to learn how to do that stuff specifically within game engines, which is going to be incredibly valuable to you if you're aiming at working in game studios once you finish our program. So the 4 years that you'll be in this program at Gnomon are going to cover all the aspects of what we call a 3D generalist skill set. And that literally means that you will be learning how to do everything in the digital production pipeline. All of those different aspects of the pipeline that I shared earlier, you'll be learning it all. Why is that important? If you know that, say, well, I know that I just want to be an animator, I just want to study that. The reason why it's important to learn the whole pipeline, and we've found at Gnomon, because we've worked so closely with the industry for over 20 years, is that the way that most artists break into the industry is not just learning one thing and waiting for the perfect position to come to them, but by becoming that artist that can move into several different types of positions so that they can go after more open doors as they begin to break into the industry. And that could look like, for example, you finish the program, you're really interested in animation, you start applying for different animation positions. Let's say you hear back from DreamWorks and they say, we love your reel, we think you're a fantastic artist, we'd love to work with you. Unfortunately, we don't have any animation positions open, but we really do need a lighting artist. Would you be willing to come on board working at that point of the pipeline? And you could confidently say yes, because you have trained for that as well. So that artist then would begin working as a lighting artist, and as they start to build up their credits and contacts with the industry, they can begin working laterally to, say, that animation position that they want to hold more long-term during their time as an industry artist. So that's how it works. But also in the last 4 quarters, the last year of the bachelor's program, you are going to get to pick out 4 electives. So you get that full 3D generalist training, and then you get to pick 4 electives that let you focus a little bit more on a particular discipline that you are very passionate about. So you get that broad foundational training, opening a lot of doors to you, also with extra skills built in that area that you really, this is what you want to do more long-term as you go out there and start working in the industry. Now, the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree has a rolling admission, which just means that it's not a race to get through that open door to apply in the fall. You can apply in the fall, the winter, the spring, or the summer. And we also have students finishing 4 times out of the year. Most of our students actually choose to remain on for the summer term so that they can finish the program within 3 years. They don't take a summer break for the whole time that they're there. They finish those 4 years of training in just 3 years. So that's our Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree at Gnomon. This is really the perfect option for someone who's wanting to be an industry artist in digital production, but also wants a college degree. Next up is our 2-year certificate program. I'm not going to spend quite as much time on this one, just because this is also a similar type of training, but it's just 2 years. It's going to be more advanced, more intense, a little bit heavier course load. It's going to be more akin to the level and the pace you're going to be working going after something like a master's degree. And this typically is used for artists who may have already gone to another art school. They have a degree, but they want to come to Gnomon as a finishing school to really lock in the skill set to become industry ready and launch out there and start working. But it's a very intense program. It's going to build those foundational 3D skills, and then you're going to choose one of 5 areas for emphasized study. And those 5 areas are going to be, just learning to be a 3D generalist, or learning specifically to work in games, or you could focus on modeling and texturing. You could focus on VFX animation, or you could focus on character and creature animation. So that's the 2-year certificate program here at Gnomon. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we have many, many individual classes that do not require a portfolio submission to enroll in. These are going to be classes that will be cumulatively 30 hours of training with an industry artist. And they're going to be over the course of 10 weeks, 3 hours per week. And these are standalone. It's going to cover many of the different types of disciplines that we teach. It's a great way for someone who might be presently in community college and eventually would want to transfer into Gnomon. You could actually start taking some digital production classes. You can even take some of those foundational classes as individual courses while you're currently in community college, just to get a taste, to begin to understand for yourself if this is something that you're going to want to do. And then, under the advisement of admissions, you actually could be taking care of some classes that will also be a part of the Bachelor's of Fine Arts program here at Gnomon. All right, so that concludes my portion of the presentation. At this point, I would like to introduce Hannah Webb, who is our Director of Admissions here at Gnomon, and she's going to be sharing with you about the admissions process. After she shares, she'll be handing it off to our Director of Financial Aid, Chris Freeman. So with that, I want to welcome Hannah to the stream. Hello, Hannah.
How are you?
Hi. I'm good. We're having a good time, so I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Okay.
All right. Cool.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm just here to talk a little bit about the admissions process. So, you've heard a lot from Adam today about what it is we're training for and sort of the different opportunities or programs or ways that we deliver that training. But I'm here to explain to you sort of how that works and what you would actually need to do to get started whenever you're ready. So first, I want to introduce the team. So my name is Hannah Webb. We'll go to the next slide here in a minute. There we go. Cool. So my name is Hannah. I'm the Director of Admissions. There are 3 other advisors that are in the department with me. That includes Zach Mendoza, Xander Paxad, who is currently in the chat there helping you guys out, and Adrian DeVoe. If you were to decide to move forward, you would be put in contact with any one of us. Our role here is to sort of guide you through the process of either signing up or applying, but also helping you figure out what is going to be the most appropriate option for you, which is going to be based on your goals moving forward and your backgrounds looking backwards. So, there are a lot of different ways to be a student at Gnomon. Gnomon, and which is going to be the best fit for you just sort of depends on you as an individual. So that's where we come in. If you were to submit an appointment request or request to contact us, you would just be connected with any one of us, and we can all help you out. So let's talk about the admissions process. So, you know, in order to attend certain programs at Gnomon, you would need to actually apply. But there are also opportunities at Gnomon to learn that don't require that you are considered for admission. The Foundation in Art and Design is the first example of something that doesn't require consideration. That means if you decided, you know, I think I want to go for the Foundation in Art and Design, you know, I really think I need that foundation training, you know, what you would need to do is basically just sign up. If you're not sure about whether whether that is the right fit for you or whether you need foundational training, that's a conversation again to have with admissions. But one of the nice things about foundation is that it's an opportunity for very beginners, you know, or people that are just kind of getting off the ground, just to jump right in. So if you wanted to just go ahead and sign right up, that's an option for you. And we'll talk about dates in a minute. Individual courses are the same way. So let's say you decided, you know, man, I don't know that I'm ready for a full degree or even for this full foundation course, but I really would like to take one Maya class and just see what it's like. Or maybe I would like to add some digital painting to my skill set or to my portfolio. Individual classes are nice because we run them every quarter. You basically can just sign yourself up to take the class that you want to take, and we have a ton of them available. Again, admissions is available to make recommendations for you, but if you know what you want to take, you can just go online and sign yourself up. Registration actually for individual courses is currently open for the fall term. So if you were interested in individual classes and wanted to take one as early as October, that's something that's available. The application, though, is necessary for that Bachelor's of Fine Art and for our certificate program. So Gnomon, requires that students have some visual art experience in order to attend these programs. What the application looks like on the next page here, the admissions process. There we go. The admissions process is something that you would need to go through, again, if you wanted to start either the BFA or the certificate. Here's what that looks like. So in order to be accepted into the BFA or certificate, first of all, we recommend that you speak to an admissions advisor. So that means talk to us and let us help you figure out either whether the program that you have selected is the right program for you, but also we can let you know where you stand in relation to the requirements. So maybe you're not sure if you're ready to do the bachelor's degree. For example, you don't know if your portfolio is up to speed. That's why you would go for step one and speak to an admissions advisor. So we recommend that you do that before you move forward with the application. After you've spoken to us, we'll say, yep, I really think BFA is the best move for you, or yeah, certificate program I think is going to be a good path. Then you would fill out the application, which is through the website. The application itself is a form that asks you your kind of personal info, contact info, but also has a questionnaire where we ask you things like, what are your career goals? What experiences have you had that sort of led you to where you are, with your art, with what you produce now. So we're trying to get to know you with the application and sort of understand how you have reached the decision to pursue this for an education, but also for a career. From there, you would submit a portfolio, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but the long and short is that it's about 15 to 20 examples of your artwork. And then we need proof of high school completion or equivalent. That means we need to know that you have graduated from high school, or as an alternative, that you have already earned a bachelor's level degree. So either will meet the requirement. But yeah, that's something that you need to check off the list. And then we have an interview. The interview is just a call, usually. Sometimes we can do a Skype call or something if that's easier for you. The interview is a chance for us to go through your submission together. After you have turned in a portfolio, you filled out a questionnaire about your background and your goals, what the interview is for us to have a conversation and make sure that there are no areas of confusion or inconsistency, go through a couple of the details of the program that you're applying to, talk about some of the policies and the next steps. So really, it's just an opportunity to look at your submission all together and say, okay, here's what you've turned in. Here's what I understand about who you are as an artist. Is there anything missing? Is there anything you'd like to add? And then we get to just sort of talk about everything together. After you have completed all of these steps, you've submitted your application, we have your portfolio, all that good stuff, then a review is conducted internally and students are notified about whether they are admitted to the school. Because we are on rolling admission, we try to get a decision back to people within about a week, sometimes 2 weeks. So this means that the earlier you apply, the earlier you hear back from us about whether you'll be offered a space in the upcoming term. So let's talk a little bit about deadlines. One of the things about Gnomon is that we are always accepting applications for the next several terms ahead. So you could start an application at any time for any of the terms for next year. Winter 2021 is going to be the next one upcoming. So Gnomon's winter term of classes begins in January. It goes January to March. If you were interested in pursuing, say, that degree, the bachelor's degree or the certificate, that means that you have until the end of October to submit an application. If you are considering starting in January, you want to start your program in January, I would recommend starting the conversation, that first step, talk to admissions. I would recommend doing that sooner than later. While we have about a month and a half before you would have to have everything turned in, the earlier we can start a conversation about what everything looks like, maybe make some recommendations for you, the more time you have to make any changes that will help increase your chances of being admitted to the school. And also, just sort of clarify what our expectations are going to be when we get to that point in time. So if you are interested in winter term, you've got some time for that. The foundation in art and design, you have a little more time to make that choice. The registration opportunity, basically when you need to sign up, is open now and will stay open until November. So if you have a lot of time before you need to decide on things like whether you want to pursue foundation. Foundation is also a good option for students that are not offered admission. So, because the application deadline is in October, let's say you're not quite ready, you would still be able to switch over to something like foundation or even an individual class and still start the same term. So yeah, a few different options. And then individual classes, those are just those one-off courses that are open for registration. Enrollment for the January term will open in December. So there's a few different options, and every one of them has a corresponding date. I'm going to show you the 2021 terms, which will show you all of the next 4 quarters. So Gnomon, again, we're on this quarter system. So we start classes in January, in April, in June, and in October every year. So you basically would just identify which is going to be the term or the time of year that you'd like to start the program, and these are some of the deadlines that are associated with each. So we just talked about winter. Spring, you would need to apply in January in order to begin those classes in April. Summer term, you would need to apply by April to begin those classes around June. And then fall of 2021 is a little different. Because students often choose to start bachelor's degrees and things in a fall term of the year. Also, especially for high school students that maybe are going to be graduating or are currently in their senior year until early next year. Fall term, we have 2 deadlines. So you'll see under fall 2021, that final deadline is June 30th, but right below it is a priority deadline. So this is Gnomon's early consideration for fall of next year. If you're thinking about starting a bachelor's degree fall of 2021, like a lot of students do, we recommend aiming for that March 5th deadline. And the reason for that is because it is, first of all, certainly it is earlier in the year, and it's nice to sort of have fall planned out, right earlier on before you graduate. But also the early deadline is when we have the most opportunity for things like scholarships, which I'm going to talk about later, and also gives you a lot of time to prepare for things like financial aid, which is somebody that you're also going to hear from later. So there's a few reasons to try to figure it out early, but most students just for the sake of planning like to try to get in there in the early consideration. That said, if you are not ready by March, you do have until June for next fall. So, there's a lot of different opportunities to start. Gnomon starts basically everything that we do every 3 months. So, there is no difference in the classes that are offered or anything like that. So if you started the 2-year program, let's say in spring 2021, you would go 2 years from spring, or if you started in the summer, it would be 2 years from summer. So you can start at any time, and then it's just 2 years or 4 years for the degree from whichever term you started. So a lot of different choices for when you can kind of get going, but we do that on purpose. It just lets students, sort of put their education where it needs to be in order to fit best into their life and into their plans. So let's talk a little bit about that portfolio. Portfolio is one of the things that I think my team and most of us probably get the most questions about, which is, what do you want? What is a portfolio? And the answer is that a portfolio is just a window into your creativity and what you like to make. Everybody's portfolio is different because really all that it is you just plucking a handful of examples out of the art that you like to make and showing it to us. There's a lot of different stuff that can make up a portfolio, but we have identified what we refer to as cornerstones to hopefully give you at least a general idea of what it is we're looking for. So when you submit a portfolio, we do not have requirements that say it must have 3D. We don't require 3D. Or you must have characters. We don't require characters. Instead, what we're doing is we are looking at your submission holistically. And these 4 cornerstones here, cheat sheet, are what we are actually scoring you on to determine your admission. So what we're trying to understand, first thing, is creativity. So is your collection of artwork that you have decided to show us creative? Does it show that you are an individual with ideas, or on the other side, is it, more like fan art, or, is there something that helps us understand what your unique perspective is? Second, there is refinement. Does it look like the work that you're showing us has been all the way finished? Does it look like you had an idea that you took all the way to completion? Does it look like you have carefully considered how you are going to be presenting this to us? Does it look like you took a nice photo of something or even scanned it? Does it look like you have a nice render of something 3D if you chose to submit 3D? Or does it just look like a screen grab and we can see the software menus? So, refinement is about sort of the level of polish and how far you have pushed yourself with your work and how much consideration you've taken into how the presentation looks when you deliver it. Relevance is how related your work is to your goals. So, if you are interested in characters, let's say, and in your application, you say, I want to be a character artist, I love storytelling, costumes, all of that, we would expect to see some example of that in your portfolio. There should be some connectivity between what you're showing us and what you're telling us. So relevance doesn't mean that you need to already know how to animate because you want to be an animator. It does not mean that. But it does mean that there should be some indication that you have begun creating work with your goals in mind in the portfolio that you submit us. So if I said I want to be a game artist and I love environments, environment design I think is really cool, but then I turn in my portfolio and it is nothing but still life drawings, tattoo flash or something, then even though you might be creative and your work might be well refined, it really is not relevant to your goals. So does this mean you have to be an expert in the thing you're trying to study? No, but it should tell us that you have thought about your goals as you were creating work. So in that same scenario, I want to be a game environment artist. Do I know how to use Unreal Engine? No. Do I maybe even have a drawing tablet? No. But okay, well, she is, maybe doing some sketches of trees and foliage, or maybe doing some value studies of landscapes and environments, or okay, here are some sketches and studies of different rock formations and things. So, there are ways to bridge the gap there between your goals and your skill set that still help us understand that this is something that is part of your life now, or something that you are actively practicing or wanting to practice on your own. The last thing on here is technical proficiency. That is how successful your work is. So if you draw a still life, how accurate is it? How much time did you spend aiming to get something correct, or trying to make something that is a successful piece of work. So technical proficiency is something that can be intimidating for people, because we get this question a lot, like, how good do I need to be? And it's hard to say, because this is only one part of the puzzle here. Gnomon is a school, and it is our job to train you to be more technically proficient. That's important to keep in mind. But we need you to have enough experience creating art that you are going to be able to keep up in our programs. So do we need you to be an expert? No, but should this be the first time you've ever picked up a pencil? Probably also not. But again, this is going to be a balance. So some students are going to be really creative and really technically proficient, but maybe less refined. Maybe they're more sketches, maybe relevance because they come from an unrelated degree, and so it's, so those students would be scoring higher in some areas and lower in others. That's true for all of this. So maybe you have very, very creative work that is super relevant to your goals, but it's not that technically proficient. They're not that successful yet. They don't look great. That's something we can work with generally too. So you don't have to have all four of these things firing all the time. But when we are reading your portfolio, we're looking at your 15 to 20 pieces of artwork. This is what we're going to be talking about. These are things that we're going to be thinking about. So we do recommend some disciplines, which I'm going to pull up here and show you. Gnomon will accept a lot of different types of work. So I keep saying we don't require 3D, which is true, but we will take images of a lot of different stuff. So you could show us some concept sketches. You could show us a sculpture that you made. You would just take some photos of it and send those in. 3D, of course, if you have it, fabulous. Animation and motion work, that's something you could show us too. Drawing and rendering, figurative drawings, figure drawings, figure paintings, traditional or digital painting, texture and lighting studies, motion graphics, and then programming and scripting. All of these things are generally considered to be relevant. So, if you are thinking about what type of art you're going to make when you sit down to make it, of course, you do not need all of these. Of course, there are examples outside of these as well, but this is just an idea of what type of work people generally show us. So I would say that, a common portfolio of 20 items, 15 to 20 items probably includes a mix, some drawings, some digital painting, and a 3D piece, or mostly digital painting and then a couple of sketches, or entirely 3D and, maybe a couple of their sort of earlier concept ideation sketches and some graphic design. So, it's always going to be a balance, and what that balance looks like is, again, going to depend on you. It's going to depend on your skill set and sort of what you're capable of making. So I'm going to briefly touch on scholarships, and then I think I'm going to take a couple questions here. Scholarships are available to students who apply for our full-time programs. Scholarships are basically based on the score that your submission receives, and that is with those 4 cornerstones, creativity, technical proficiency, relevance, and refinement, but also on things like your submitted application questionnaire. So we recommend that you be thorough, use spell check, things like that. And then because we ask you for your transcripts, we're also going to be seeing your academic background. So, while, again, we don't require that you are a 4.0 student, strengths and weaknesses we're going to look at and we're going to consider as well. So a scholarship is basically awarded at the time when we review you for acceptance, and it's holistically on your submission. The other piece of this is that you need to do this by by the deadline. So if you submit an application super late, you will have missed the window for a scholarship. So that's one more reason to start this process early enough that you make sure that you are able to put together the submission that you think best represents you by the time it would need to be received. So yeah, and any of this we can talk to you more about. I, of course, mentioned that admissions is available to answer these kinds of questions. So any of this you want to dig deeper in, you can always contact us, and we can continue the conversation. So yeah. So Adam, are we going to be answering any questions here?
Yeah,
today?
We've got some questions coming in from the chat that we can bring up. And thank you, Hannah, for that. That was a great presentation. One thing I just wanted to plug really quick, well, not plug, but actually provide as a resource, is, obviously we can't get to every question that's out there today. There's other questions that might come up after the stream. I do want to draw your attention to our YouTube channel, which I mentioned earlier. There is an amazing, stream. I think it's about an hour-long conversation between you, Hannah, and one of our recruiters here at Gnomon, only about the portfolio, really getting into the nooks and crannies of the portfolio. So I'd strongly encourage you guys to go and watch that. It's portfolio tips and tricks. Another stream amongst all of the, like over 100 events that are on there. Another one that'd be great to watch is our placement stream about getting your dream job after graduating. That is with our placement director, Shannon Wiggins, and she talks about our placement rate and how Gnomon students are finding jobs in the industry. She also just shares some tips and understandings of how to relate to the industry and, present yourself when you're looking for work. So just want to say that on the front end, but let's dive into some of these questions, guys. All right. So let's see here. I think some of them, actually, your presentation answered a few of these that have come in so far, but there's a couple. There's one that came up. Let's see. As a junior in high school, what type of work can I get into my portfolio to improve my eventual application in the BFA in digital production, focusing on VFX for film and television? So kind of with what's available to them while they're in high school, what would you recommend them focusing on?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's kind of a two-parter. Part one is what should you do as maybe a younger student or anyone that maybe has a longer timeline. So on one hand, like what kind of art should I do? What should I be spending my time on if I'm not even going to apply for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever? The answer is basically to work on anything. The point is to be working on stuff. My recommendation is always to set a production schedule for yourself and just try to force yourself to create art regularly and maintain a regular output. That, is probably the number one thing that will benefit you, not, of course, just through an application to a school like Gnomon, but also just as an artist in your life. The best thing that you can do for yourself is to make stuff regularly and to make a lot of it. So, what I and my team often recommend is that students make an effort to produce a piece of artwork every week. If you did that now and had a year, let's say, before you applied, you would have a lot of artwork to pick from to craft a portfolio. So first thing first, make a lot of stuff. The second part of your question is, what should somebody interested in visual effects do, assuming maybe you don't have as much access to education about it, you maybe don't have access to something like Maya. There's a couple different answers to that. Answer number one is that a traditional skill set, a drawing and painting and regular art skill set, is actually still pretty relevant and is still going to help you out a lot. So I would say, you don't need to abandon the drawing and only look to tech resources in order to continue improving your art, even if you have something like a VFX specific goal. So drawing is still relevant. So keep doing that. That is going to help you as an artist forever. You will always need that skill set, and it will help you perpetually. So draw. But if you're looking for resources specifically for things like working in software, working in technology, there are a couple different ways to go about that. I recommend talking to admissions so that we can send you some links and connect you with some resources. But one of the nice things about living in technology age is that 3D software has become much more accessible. One good example of this is Blender. Blender software is free and it runs on a Mac, it runs on a PC. There are 1.5 million tutorials online and things to help you get started and get off the ground. There are also some kind of app-based 3D things if you're using a tablet or if you're using even a phone. Sculptress is an example, So do a little research, but there are ways to play around with software and creating art in 3D that don't require that you are learning on production software or spending an arm and a leg or need a computer rig that you could simulate blowing up a city. There actually are much more accessible ways to start doing this, but again, Gnomon does not expect you to be an expert with digital anything really when you come in. We would like you to have explored it a little, but if your eventual portfolio is mostly traditional media with maybe a sprinkling of trying out Blender, trying out 3D, making sure that this is something that you like enough to really commit this hard to it, that'll be totally fine. So, you don't feel like you are obligated to learn software right now. It won't hurt you to try to learn it right now, but it's really not the most important thing.
Cool, thank you. I've got another question that came in about the form in which they submit their portfolio. Somebody's asking, can I basically present my portfolio to you as a website?
Sure. So yeah, how you submit your portfolio, we're pretty flexible on, although it does have to be digital. So please don't bring us original work. Please don't print stuff out. It could be a website. It could be a PDF. It could be a video reel if you have a lot of motion work or you want to show us turnarounds or something. It could be a combination. Sometimes students will submit one Vimeo link or YouTube link or even just a movie file. They'll send us that alongside a bunch of JPEG images, and stuff to supplement for their still work. So we're pretty flexible as long as it feels thoughtful. I would say don't just make a folder on your computer and just dump a bunch of files in it, named random stuff and be like, here, I don't know. So as long as it feels like you are making an effort to present your work to us, beyond that, we're not overly picky about which one of those avenues you choose.
Great. We've got another question asking, okay, if I have some VFX work in my portfolio, in other words, that's the majority of their portfolio pieces, do they still need to give 15 to 20 pieces? How do they sort of make up that quantity, as it were?
Yeah, so the 15 to 20 thing is a range to give you a general idea of what we consider to be enough work to gauge your consistency. So, the idea is that we want more than 5, but we want fewer than 100. So, I would say it will depend on your content. Sometimes students that, like, on the other side of it, have a lot of looser sketches. Animators are a good example of this, that have tons and tons of like gestural studies. Will probably have more than 20 images, and sometimes students that are doing maybe scenes that are super complex. So you're modeling something, you are comping it into a scene, you're running some effects through it, will have fewer individual projects that have more kind of moving pieces. So that is this enough work is going to depend on what it looks like. But if it ends up being slightly fewer projects because they are more elaborate, I would say that is, broadly speaking, okay. But it depends. It really just depends what it looks like. So again, you are under no obligation to apply by having this conversation with us. So if you wanted to send examples to admissions@gnomon.edu and just say, hey, here's what I have. Is this enough content to apply? We can pretty easily tell you.
Awesome. Someone's asking, let's see here. Where was it again? What are some examples of like programming and scripting that could be included in a portfolio submission?
Yeah, so including programming and scripting does not exempt you from showing visual art, by the way, but it is considered a valuable skill set. So most of the time when people show us stuff like this, they will either show us like maybe a page or two of code, or you could show us a before and after of something if you're manipulating code or editing code or adjusting code. For people that have experience with things like hard coding but don't have a good way of showing it or presenting it, what you could also do is just mention it in the questionnaire and just say, hey, I come from a computer science background. I have a lot of experience with Java, I have experience with C++, I have experience with whatever. So, it's not always as visual, but it'll depend a little bit. Students that are working node-based is a good example of this. You can show us, you could take screen grabs of sort of how you've arranged things and sort of show us the behind the scenes that way. That's another way to kind of show us like how you are building things, from a technical standpoint. So another good ask admissions, and we can say, okay, I don't really need pages and pages of script, but because you're doing this, why don't you show it like this and mention it in the questionnaire here and arrange it this way.
Wonderful. Let's see. Someone's wanting to know, what would you have to say about a portfolio submission consisting mostly of digital works and few traditional work?
Fine. As long as it is creative, generally technically proficient, well presented, relevant to your goals, fine.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's worth noting too is, these are admissions advisors, right? A lot of people that I encounter, that I speak with about Gnomon, the presupposition is still like, well, before I even show an admissions advisor my work, it all has to be ready and perfectly arranged. Like they're, just like Hannah said, they're available to you for a conversation before you've got that final portfolio put together. So we call them advisors, not judges. They're here to advise you. Right. And help you out. Yeah, for sure.
And we're not passing judgment on you when you bring us something early stage, by the way. So, it's not like showing me your work, let's say as a junior in high school, is going to change the way that we review your work in a year. Showing me some good, some less good artwork in the beginning and asking me to help you pick out 15 to 20 artworks to submit is not going to change the way that we is not going to change the way that we review you or think about you. It's not going to affect your interview. So yeah, you're really not out anything for having this conversation early. And our entire job is to help you get into the school. So we are a kind of cool free resource. And the earlier you have a conversation, the more time you have to make adjustments if necessary. So yeah, show us stuff, ask us. Truly, we are available 5 days a week, sometimes 6, as like right now. But yeah, we're always here, and we exist to help you get in. So please don't be shy about asking us questions, even if you think it's a dumb question.
And thank you so much, Hannah. That pretty much wraps our question time. But yeah, there's no. You definitely want to reach out to these guys. They're here for you. They're here to help you put your best foot forward as you start to apply to Gnomon. So give them the opportunity to help you out. Thank you very much, Hannah. I'm going to turn it over now to Chris Freeman, our Director of Financial Aid. So have a great rest of your Sunday and rest of your weekend. And yeah, guys, reach out to Hannah. She's here for you.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh, I see.
Hi,
I'm
Chris.
a little off grid here. Let me, there we go.
Yeah, just scoot over. There you go. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the stream. Guys,
you.
so Chris is going to share with you now about financial aid opportunities for
Yes.
students at Gnomon. So I'll turn it over to you now, Chris. Take it away.
Thank you. So I'm Chris Freeman, Director of Financial Aid. Not everybody is looking for financial aid. So the people maybe in that area maybe don't need to necessarily listen to what I'm about to talk about. Also, if you're an international student, unfortunately, there are really no options for financial aid for international students. So with that said, let's go on to the next slide here. There are 3 main areas of financial aid. And if I can get that, there we go. There's the federal student aid, there's the state, California state aid, and there's outside aid. And we'll show you here what those are made up of. So federal aid consists of the Pell Grants. That's the first thing that gets looked at, if you will, for the federal aid application. I'll get back to that in just a moment. We also have some work study if you have any time. Most of the students who come to Gnomon think, oh, yeah, I'll make some time for work study. You may not have the time, but it is there for you if you need to, and you just come and talk to me about it. Direct loans, those are loans directly from the federal government through the Department of Education. And then we've got supplemental educational opportunity grants. So those are for people who have Pell Grants. So we have a certain amount of money to supplement the Pell Grant as well. For the state aid in the center, those are the Cal Grants. So again, that's the state aid. If you're not a student who resides in the state of California currently, you'll have to wait a year and reside in the state of California for a year before you can actually apply. So a lot of our students, maybe they don't get the state grants for the first year, but they're willing to or able to apply in the second year and beyond. Outside aid, those are any scholarships you may find, as well as private education loans to supplement the federal aid, because the federal aid is limited. You can only get a certain amount of federal aid, but private education loans can supplement that. Scholarships, I would love to say there are a truckload of scholarships out there. Gnomon, as you heard Hannah talk about, has the merit-based scholarship for those during the application process. But honestly, there's not a lot of free money for 3D animators. It's kind of a sad thing, but it's the reality. So if you find outside scholarships, or if you're maybe in your town, there's some local scholarships you can apply for, or something, maybe you're the first in your family to go to college. There are certain types of scholarships you can look for in those realms. And I would recommend any kind of a scholarship search engine that does not ask you for money. If it asks you for money, it's a scam. Okay, so just make sure you keep that in mind. Okay, next screen, please. What I do is I look towards it's the FAFSA, so it stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. There it is. The first F is free. If you find yourself on a website applying for federal student aid and they're asking you again for money, that's not correct. Get out of that website entirely. The government is trying to clamp down on those websites because they're basically just taking your information. But there's not much we can do about that except to direct you directly to the federal government's website fafsa.ed.gov. And it's going to look a little bit like this when you land on that page. So this is it. Again, FAFSA. And then if you're new to the FAFSA website, you'll need to create what's called an FSA ID, and that will act as your username. And then you'll create a password, and that will become your electronic signature for all of the federal needs that we have, like signing promissory notes for the loans, signing your electronic submission of the FAFSA, that sort of thing. So that username and password will remain with you, and also with your parents if your parents are involved in this process as well. Okay, next screen, please. Oh, this is crazy what it's doing here. Anyway, it's the end of it. Okay, well, let me just tell you this. If you're looking for financial aid, I like to have the financial aid all taken care of, all the paperwork done before orientation. Orientation is usually the week before classes start. So if you're coming in expecting to use financial aid, let's make sure we get all of your paperwork done before the orientation date. So once you've come to orientation, all that paperwork is behind you. Okay, now you can also apply for financial aid and look at it before you apply to Gnomon. So I have some students and parents who say, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to even afford the school. Let's have a look at that before I start the application process. You're more than welcome to do that. We can have an entire conversation. We just have to figure out which program, which start date. And once I have your FAFSA, I can show you exactly what it's going to cost you and how it's all going to look, what you're going to owe, all that stuff. So I can show that to you before you even start the application process. And also, there's no limit to the financial aid. Like, there's no actual deadline. I mentioned having it prepared, all the paperwork prepared before you start classes. But if you're not expecting to use financial aid and unexpectedly see that, oh my gosh, well, I need to use financial aid, for sure you can still come to me and get it. There's no like, oh, you missed that, you can't have it. No, anytime you need it, I'm here to help you. And also, even if you think, well, I'm not eligible for any financial aid, you might be surprised. I've actually had a couple of students who came to me for help. They didn't expect to use financial aid. They came to me for help. Turns out they were eligible for grant money the entire time. So that might happen. So that is my spiel for now. You can get in touch with me at chris.freeman@gnomon.edu for more specific information. But I'd like to see, Adam, is there any questions in the chat for me?
Someone is asking about what about vocational rehabilitation?
Okay, so is that a veterans benefit? I believe if that's a veterans benefit, our access to veterans benefits is going to sunset this year. And we're not sure exactly the date, but I think it would be unfair to tell you that, yes, you're going to be able to use it because those benefits are going to sunset. So the veterans, any kind of veterans benefits, voc rehab, Chapter 33, the post 9/11 GI Bill, all of those are going to be gone. Yellow ribbon, all of those. Okay,
thank you very much. Well, that's the only specific question we've had come in from the chat so far. But guys, my colleague Xander can put Chris's email address in the chat if any of you want to reach out directly with any specific questions you got. I mean, hey, financial aid, Chris should be one of your best friends at Gnomon. So Chris, thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yeah. For the rest of our time, we are going to be getting ready for our fantastic panel that we have coming up for you. This is going to be a panel with 3 Gnomon alumni, Jay Machado, who is a hard surface model supervisor, Industrial Light and Magic, Tyler Bolyard, who is a 3D character artist at Wonderstorm, and Alexandria Federico, who's also a character artist. So we're going to be getting set up for that. But while we do that, we would like to show you a special video that we've put together that outlines and showcases what the online experience is like at Gnomon, because this is a virtual open house and our classrooms at the moment are virtual. But we also want you to know that it's very important to us that we are providing to you a quality online experience. We have an amazing campus, and unfortunately, we can't give you a tour of that today, but what we can give you a tour of is the thoughtfulness and the effectiveness that we put into this custom platform that we developed for presenting our courses online. So Miranda, would you please show that video while we get ready for the panel?
Hello. My name is Josh Herman. I'm the Chief Creative Officer here at Gnomon. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about our online learning system and our virtual campus. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about Gnomon. Gnomon was founded in 1997, 23 years ago. We're located in Hollywood, and Gnomon specializes in computer graphics education for careers in the entertainment industry. And the key word there is careers. Gnomon focuses on making sure that when you graduate from a Gnomon program, that you get a job. Gnomon has consistently had very high placement rates, and the way we do that is with experienced instructors who can use their real-world training and education to help make sure that our curriculum moves in tandem with the industry. It's very common to have a teacher working somewhere like Riot, or Blizzard, or Disney, or DreamWorks, and they're teaching at their Gnomon classes after their workday, which means that they're teaching you the most up-to-date knowledge and software that they're using every day in the specialty that they're working in. Now, we won't be opening our physical campus this summer term. We'll actually be hosting all of our classes online. But what this means for you is you have access to all of our amazing teachers that we would normally have only on our physical campus anywhere in the world. And online learning isn't something that's new for Gnomon. Our first online class launched in 2006, and 7 years later, in 2013, we moved to a more live, interactive format that we felt would be better for you, the student, because interacting with your teacher directly is far more important to us than watching any type of pre-recorded video. Additionally, all of our foundation and art and design classes are also online this term. These classes mostly focus around fundamentals and traditional art, painting, drawing, sculpting. Now, this is a lot of what we look for in our portfolios for our full-time certificate and BFA degrees. So if you're wanting to apply but feel like you don't have a portfolio that's ready for that yet, take a look at those foundation classes and then speak to an admissions advisor and they can help you out. And with this comes our custom online learning platform. This is where you'll join all your classes, speak to your instructors, fellow students, everything. It's very simple, very easy to use. So let's jump in and take a look. When you first get your Gnomon login, this is what you'll see. Log in with your username and password, and that'll put you on your course dashboard. This is all your courses for your upcoming term. You can select them here, or you can select them from the course dropdown. Let's jump into Introduction to 3D with Maya. Here you'll see what week it is, as well as anything that we'll be covering in this week, as long as class files and class assignments. Clicking on the assignments, you'll see what the homework is and how to submit it, as well as any necessary files for you to complete it. To upload, hit Select File, pick your zip file, and hit OK. To download any of the files, just click Download and you'll see them appear here. Now let's jump back to our course dashboard, because I have a class starting right now. Here you'll see it's very similar. Overview of the class, what we'll be covering, necessary files, and any bits of homework. Here you'll see a button that says Join Class Session. Clicking this button will launch GoToMeeting and you'll automatically join your class. Once you're inside GoToMeeting, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to have audio options, screen share options, and webcam options, and you'll have a panel for each. You'll also have access to your inputs and your outputs, as well as the box for attendees that shows you everyone in your class, and a chat box where you can chat with your instructor and your fellow classmates. Hello, everyone. Additionally, each class also has its own discussion board. Simply click on one, post your comment, upload any necessary files, and create a post. As you can see, it's very simple and it's very easy to use, and we hope that you enjoy using it as well. Before we go, I wanted to touch on a couple things real quick. First is our resources. The first I want to talk about is our library. Now, we do have a physical library at our campus, but that doesn't stop our librarian from helping you find resources that you're looking for. So shoot them an email and they'd be happy to help you. Next up is our AMC, or Academic Mentoring Center. This is where you can get one-on-one tutoring with any of your homework projects. All you have to do is shoot them an email and schedule an appointment. It's really that simple. Then you can get one-on-one assistance, and they can even request control of your screen so they can give you hands-on training. Additionally, all full-time program students will have access to a Gnomon workshop subscription. That gives you access to over 300 highly curated titles by top-tier professionals teaching in a broad range of specializations. The next thing to talk about is our Gnomon community. We have a private Discord channel as well as a private Facebook group where all of our students and alumni interact. We've also been doing a lot of stuff on Twitch recently, so feel free to check out our art jams, our events, and of course our Gnomon info sessions where you can learn more about Gnomon, our full-time programs, classes, and of course careers. Now, if all this sounds awesome, but you're worried you're not going to have access to the software, don't worry about that. We've got you covered. Full-time program students will have software provided. Additionally, if you're a full-time program student and in Los Angeles, we'd be happy to loan you a workstation, a second monitor, a drawing tablet, and a webcam. We really care about you having the best possible education experience you can, so we don't want to let software or hardware get in the way. Now's the perfect time to get a head start on your art education. There's no reason to stall. Gnomon cares about giving you the best educational experience, regardless of whether it's online or in person. Thanks, and we look forward to seeing you this summer.
If you want to see that again, by the way, that video is available on the front page of our website. If you want to learn a little bit more about that experience, our online experience is also something that our admissions advisors can speak with you about as well. So with that, I am really excited to introduce our alumni, our guest industry artists who are going to be on this panel with us today for our open house. Just in case anybody's found us on Twitch partially way through this is Gnomon's virtual open house, where it's kind of your one-stop shop to learn about Gnomon, careers for artists in the industry. And right now we're about to start a panel where we actually get to hear from the industry. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Jay Machado. Jay Machado is a hard surface model supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic. He specializes in hard surface modeling, texture painting, and look development. And he's worked at ILM for 7 years and has 9 years of industry experience as a modeler. His credits include The Mandalorian, Seasons 1 and 2, Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, Rogue One, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and Transformers, Age of Extinction. In addition to his work on feature films, Jay has worked on music videos, commercials, AAA games, and amusement park rides. He's also exploring physically based rendering, VR, game development, and 3D printing outside of his work. Jay graduated from Gnomon's high-end CG certificate program in 2011 with a concentration on hard surface modeling and texturing. And with that, Jay, welcome to the stream. We're so happy to have you here.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to frame up a little better. There we go. That's
excellent. All right. So hang tight. I'm going to introduce our next couple of guests here. Our next guest we're going to introduce is Tyler Bolyard. And he is currently working as a 3D character artist at Wonderstorm, creating characters for the Dragon Prince animated series and video game in development. His past experience includes DreamWorks, Disney Animation, Nickelodeon, Gentle Giant, and the Jim Henson Company, among others. He has been a part of the entertainment industry with experience in film, television, video games, commercials, and collectible toys since 2013 after graduating from Gnomon School of Visual Effects in Hollywood. That's okay. That's the end of it. Sorry. With that, Tyler, welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here. Oh, Tyler, it sounds like your audio might be muted. If you and Miranda want to work that out.
Oh, is it working now?
You got it. You're in. Okay.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. So next, I'd like to introduce Alexandria Federico. She is a character artist. Alexandria is a recent graduate of Gnomon and currently the lead character artist at Iridium Studios for a soon-to-be-announced RPG now in development. She graduated in 2020 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in digital production and a concentration in character modeling. So with that, Alexandria, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello.
Hi. All right. Well, guys, let's get into it. I've got a few questions for you to kind of to kick it off, to get us started. And then we're going to take a little bit of time to receive some questions from our audience as well. But the first question that I'd like to put out to all three of you, just to kind of share a brief answer to, for each of you, could you just share a little bit about how you found your way into Gnomon? When you started into our program, where were you coming from? How did you discover Gnomon, and what was that entry point like? And we can start with you, Jay.
Okay, so I went to, I'd always, been into drawing, and I actually majored in illustration at Cal State Fullerton. At that point, I was really interested in doing concept art, but I wasn't quite at the level I needed to be to enter the industry. And the way I'd heard about Gnomon is we had watched some of the Scott Robertson DVDs at Cal State Fullerton, and I decided, I should look into more DVDs, and then I found out about the school, and I went to an open house. I mean, obviously different than this. I actually got to go to campus, and it was funny because on the way there, I actually got rear-ended, and my car got totaled, and it was this whole thing. But managed to make it to campus a little bit later. We went to a later session for the open house, and even just walking around the halls, seeing all the artwork, I just felt like I needed to be there. So I talked with financial aid. I took out student loans and started, and that was that pretty much.
Awesome. But, so sorry to hear about the rear end. That's
oh yeah.
The car got totaled.
It did. And we were able to drive it, but technically after that, it became a salvage vehicle. It was
oh my goodness. That's amazing though. So on top of the stress,
I'll never forget it.
You were on campus and you were inspired enough to go. Even though I'm worried about my car, I think I want to come to this school. That's amazing. Totally. Awesome. Alexandria, can you tell us a little bit about your kind of how you found your way into Gnomon?
Well, I started out at UC Riverside for 2 years trying to major in fine art. And when I finally got to my fine art class, because you had to take 2 years of general ed before you could even touch anything having to do your major, it was a total joke. And most of the people in that class were chemistry majors trying to take fine art as mess around class for a free credit. And I dropped out of school that same day. And then I started teaching myself how to draw through internet tutorials, and I found the Gnomon workshop, and I subscribed, and I've been doing tutorials from there for a long time. And then I finally figured out that, oh, this place is a physical school. I didn't know that. And so I came in around 2015 to have a chat with financial aid and get a tour of this campus, and I fell in love right away, seeing all these cool sculptures and student work just plastered all over the walls. And I applied, and that's how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Tyler, how did you find your way into Gnomon?
Yeah, so my path was actually a little bit similar to Jay. I originally studied illustration, so I grew up always loving art and knowing that I wanted to make it a career path some way, somehow. But I grew up in a really small town in the Midwest in Ohio. So a lot of my background was very traditional, like oil painting and acrylic painting and sculpting with clay a little bit and stuff like that. And so my choice to go to college was to study illustration because I figured that would be a way I could kind of make it into a career path where I could do children's books or magazines maybe, or concept art. And I really didn't even know about digital art until I went to college and I got a Wacom tablet and I was like, oh, what is this? You can actually paint on the computer? Wow. So yeah, through most of college, I studied illustration, and I feel like I got decent at concept art and character design and painting and stuff, but kind of the same as Jay. I didn't really feel like I was at the level that I would need to be, because concept art, probably of anything in the industry, is, I would say, the most competitive of anything. There's just so many people that want to do it, and you have to be at a really high level to really make it happen. But I still I always grew up on 80s movies of practical effects and building creatures and stuff like that. So that was another path that I thought maybe could happen. And I actually did an internship with Jim Henson while I was still in undergrad. And I kind of saw the way that industry was going, that it's very much freelance based, and with the rise in visual effects and sculpting and ZBrush and modeling in Maya, it's just unfortunately taking a lot of that work away. Whereas I think a hybrid is really the best to do, which a lot of studios are kind of doing that now, seeing you can actually mesh both and still have both industries. But I think it was my junior or senior year in undergrad that I found some of the Gnomon workshop tutorials, and I started watching those and just starting to dive into ZBrush and Maya myself a little bit. And I got really, really interested in it and really loved it right away. And it was just awesome that I could sit down at the computer and just start sculpting something without having to heat up clay and get everything out and build an armature. And, I felt like I could just jump in, kind of start on something a lot quicker than the time it would take. Or, even with digital painting, you don't have to get out, all your supplies and your brushes and your water, and you can just jump in and just start having fun. So, yeah, my dad actually flew out here with me and to LA to visit Gnomon, and I was just blown away by the school, by the caliber of the work that was displayed, and just everything I was seeing. So I just fell in love right away, and I was like, I need to figure out a way to make this happen. And yeah, we figured out a way to get some student aid, and yeah, and then I think it was 2 or 3 months later, I ended up moving out, and my dad kind of drove across country with me on a road trip, and that was fun. And yeah, moved out here, and I've been out here ever since. I think that was 8 or 9 years ago now. So
awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So the next question I want to, each of you had the opportunity to touch on briefly, and probably a really important question for a lot of our viewers right now on the stream. What was important to you about the student experience at Gnomon? In other words, what would you want to tell somebody about the student experience that is considering coming to Gnomon? And I think, well, why don't we just start? We'll stay with you, Tyler. We'll start up with you, and we'll make our rounds. Yeah.
I think one of the most exciting things to me was just being taught by industry professionals who are currently working at the studios that you want to work at, and being able to kind of know before you go into the class who you're going to be taught by. And it's a much more professional environment, I would say, than going to college like in the Midwest where I went, because not to say that teachers aren't professional, but there's a lot of the case where somebody might graduate and never really worked in the industry, and then like 2-3 years later they're teaching a class. So you're being taught by somebody who might be, you know, well or decent at their craft, but they don't have industry experience to relate to what they're teaching. So I think that is like probably the biggest thing. And then the other thing is just being around other students who are just as motivated, and you know, they really are hungry to work in the industry as much as you are. So it really pushes you to that next level where you might not get a lot of that at a traditional art school or university.
Yeah. And then Alexandria, what would you like to share about your student experience at Gnomon?
I have to agree with what he said about teachers being directly from the industry themselves, because I've had quite a few art teachers in the past who just didn't get it, and they didn't understand your hunger to actually apply your art somewhere else, and weren't necessarily even artists themselves. Like my high school art teacher, he couldn't draw, but he could play the clarinet. So they hired him as the art teacher, and I didn't learn anything in that class. And yeah, as well as the motivation of other students being around you, and all the fantastic student work being plastered everywhere and telling you, hey, this person started from nothing and now they can do this, and you can do this too if you stick around and tough it out.
We could expand that just a little bit more, because you touched on something really important, I think, and that is like your peers at Gnomon, the other people that you find there. You know, I think that the people working in VFX and in the industry are kind of their own breed to a certain degree. What was it like kind of finding yourself amongst your peer group there at Gnomon?
It was probably the weirdest experience of my life, because my whole life I had gone with being around people who just didn't understand me. And now I'm finally in this giant circle of art nerds, and I can finally talk to people and go on and on about really specific art related things, and they won't get bored, and we can talk and have a conversation, bounce ideas off of each other, and you just get a really good rapport with people that understand you. Yeah, no, I hear so many industry artists talk about just what you said, is that a big part of that is the people that you meet along the way, and that you stay in contact with as you graduate. And everybody I've talked to at Gnomon, it says the same thing. It's like, I feel like I found my people. Yeah. When I come here. So let's see, Jay, what would you like to tell us about your student experience at Gnomon?
Well, they covered a lot of the major points in terms of, you know, working with professionals and other students and stuff. I think that, you know, collaboration is an important part of this industry, because I mean, it is a team sport. I mean, if you watch the credits of any film or game, it's a massive undertaking by a huge group of people. And sort of getting that experience of working with other people and working with instructors is important. And, you know, it's also, in a way, it's like taking a class at Gnomon is almost like a job interview, because you're working with a professional, and if they like your work and if they like how you work, they're going to remember you, and they're going to call on you if they need people to, you know, work with them. So that's part of the, you know, when we're hiring at ILM, you know, the first place I look is Gnomon, because it's kind of like, I know the caliber of work, I know the quality I'm going to get, but I also know the experience that the students went through. It's like a trial by fire. It's a lot of work. It's challenging, but it forms you into an amazing artist. And like, just knowing what a student at Gnomon has gone through makes me appreciate, you know, their work ethic.
Yeah, and that's what you brought up about the, you know, being in a classroom with an industry artist. It's almost like each course is like a little mini internship, because you're actually building a contact with somebody at a studio that you can make a strong impression on.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's like it's almost like you when you like in college, it was really easy to skip class or give an excuse, but with this, you kind of have to think, oh, this is an important person. I can't be like that, you know. It's a different mentality than like your typical college where it's way more lax, you know.
Yeah, there definitely is sort of a, okay, sit up straight, you know, like let's do this when your instructor's there. Okay, so for the next question, I wanted to pose to you guys, to each of you. And I'd like to start with you, Alexandria, because you're our most recent graduate from Gnomon that we're talking with. What was it like the trajectory that Gnomon gave you launching into the industry after graduation? What was that exit from Gnomon like for you?
Well, I guess it was a bit less traditional than it usually is, considering we're going through a soft apocalypse right now. But that didn't really seem to impede my ability to get work. I saw like a lot of mass layoffs happening in visual effects, and that was sort of consistent for about a month. And then after that, things sort of settled down. I started getting offers and interviews pouring in, like a lot of them at the same time. So I think that if you go to Gnomon, you sort of, as a rookie, rise to the top as far as prospective employees go, and they'll target you first. So it's kind of, through going through Gnomon, you're a bit apocalypse proof. So it wasn't really, awesome. Really wasn't much to worry about.
Yeah, training artists for the apocalypse. That should be a tagline. That's amazing, though. I mean, and I think, you know, that was one of the reasons why I was so excited, Alexandria, that you're going to be on the panel today, because I think it's invaluable for the people that are in the stream today, considering Gnomon as an education opportunity, to hear from someone that graduated very recently, but not only that, graduated under the circumstances that we're in right now. That's real world data. That's really, really important to have, because I hear from a lot of people in the industry that it's a hard time, but it's not like there's not work for people. Just like you said, Gnomon's going to help you, especially as a junior artist per se, shine like head and shoulders for sure. So Jay, tell us a little bit about your trajectory out of Gnomon. What was that like for you?
Well, I worked on some less glamorous projects at first. I did a sort of a direct-to-DVD movie, animated feature. I did a commercial, a music video, and like it was kind of, you know, it wasn't like I just jumped right to ILM. It's like a process of, you know, it's almost like you start working on things and people get to know how you work, and then you get recommended, and it was like this whole network of things that happened. One of my first jobs was on God of War Ascension, and that was basically from a classmate at Gnomon who said, "Hey, we need a person. You want to come in?" I said, "Okay." And his word, just from his work ethic at the company, was enough for them to give me a shot and hire me, because I was, you know, 3 or 4 months out of school, you know, and I think that was kind of the important thing. But what was weird about that was when I got the call from ILM, they had just seen my student reel, and they hadn't seen any of the other work that I'd done, and it took a while. There was a bit of a courtship with them, where at first they didn't have budget for me, and then I had just accepted a contract, and I didn't want to back out of it. And so it took about a year for me to kind of get the timing right and get to here. But I mean, when I got to ILM, I'd only been in the industry like 2 years. So it was pretty fast. And yeah, like I said, it's in terms of it really is like a trial by fire. And it's great that you learn so much more of the pipeline than just I'm a modeler. And having that understanding of the other disciplines, and it really made me fit right in at ILM, and I became an important asset because I understood more of the pipeline, and I was able to do more than just be a modeler. I could texture, I could do look dev, I could do some rigging and animation and stuff like that, and it just made me more valuable as an artist, having more of that education at Gnomon.
Yeah, and thank you. It's so, I've talked with Shannon Wiggins about this too. It's so important to understand that it's a process. It's a journey.
Yeah.
You know, and I've definitely heard that Gnomon helps you develop resilience for the journey, for sure. Tyler, talk to us a little bit about your trajectory, like right after Gnomon. What was that like for you?
Yeah, actually, I think my first job after Gnomon was I got the job because of a teacher that I had at Gnomon who recommended me, which was pretty cool, which was at Gentle Giant, which is a place a lot of recent grads seem to start. It's a kind of a cool company. They do a lot of a mix of different things. They do some visual effects. They do a lot of scanning of actors for film for visual effects as well, and then they also do a lot of toys and collectibles and stuff. So I got to work on a mix of different things like that, which was fun. And then I had kind of a spree of a bunch of different commercial gigs that were a bit shorter in length at different places like PSYOP and things like that. But it wasn't really until my first big break, I think, was at Nickelodeon Animation, which actually came also from a Gnomon alumni by anything. So it was a texture position that was open, and I just kind of applied for it, and I didn't know anyone there. But I just kind of went on LinkedIn and was looking around to see if there were any people from Gnomon that might work at Nickelodeon. And I found someone, and I just off the cuff, like, hey, I'll send her a message, maybe she won't see it or maybe she will. And it just so happened that she wrote back to me and she was like, actually, that's my position. I'm going on maternity leave and I could definitely recommend you because you're from Gnomon and I really like your work. So It was kind of randomly worked out that way. And I ended up getting the position, and it was only supposed to be for like 6 months, I think, until she came back. But they ended up liking my work enough that they just made another opening for me. So I got to stay even longer. So that was cool.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Really
so
cool,
I ended up working on the Ninja Turtles 3D show there. That was going on for a while. I think it had like 3 or 4 seasons. And then while I was at Nickelodeon, Disney actually opened up their apprenticeship program. So I actually applied for that. And I had been applying. I think that was like my 3rd time applying for that. I'd kept going to like CTN and trying to meet recruiters from there. And it was kind of like Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar were sort of like the goals that I really wanted to get to someday. And I ended up applying for that, and I basically just kept going to like I said, like conventions like CTN or SIGGRAPH and trying to just take like an iPad or something and show my reel and just get feedback and kind of apply that, and kept going back. So I think that was about 2 to 3 years after Gnomon that I finally got into Disney, and that was just amazing to be there. It was kind of like the imposter syndrome when I first got there. It was like, there's all these just amazing artists who have been there, some of them for like 30, 40 years, and I was like, I don't belong here. This is crazy. Like they're going to realize like I'm not that good and they're going to kick me out. So that was pretty intense. It was almost like another boot camp, like Gnomon almost, because how they do it there is like the first 3 to 6 months, you're kind of like on a trial period where you have a mentor and they're kind of like teaching you to kind of get you up to speed. And at a lot of places like Disney and DreamWorks, they have a lot of their own proprietary software that you have to learn as well. They have their own customary pipelines that work for the films that they do. So it was kind of getting up to speed on that and sort of like translating the artistic knowledge you have into being able to use their programs. And that was super fun. And then I ended up getting brought on to Zootopia. Was the first film I got to work on there. And then I think after that, ended up getting hired on as staff. So I got to work on, after that, I got to work on Moana. I got to work on the Inner Working short, Wreck-It Ralph 2. And then after that, I decided to leave. I loved Disney and I loved working there. It was just, I felt like I was ready for something else. I'd been there for about 4.5 years at the time. And when you're at a big studio, it kind of like, depending on where you're at, you kind of can easily feel like you're more like a cog in a wheel rather than having like a lot of your own artistic freedom. Because the way that bigger studios work is you have to be much more specialized usually in something very specific, because it just takes hundreds of people to get films like that made over the course of like 5 or 6 years. So it's just an incredible amount of work that you really have to be really good at one thing. But I found myself starting to miss modeling because I was just very focused in look dev and texturing. So I kind of wanted to break out of that. And I actually went over to DreamWorks for a little while, to DreamWorks TV. And I got to work on a show called Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous that just came out on Netflix on Friday.
Awesome.
So I got to do some character modeling on that, which was really fun. And then I got another opportunity from Wonderstorm, which was last year, which is they're still very much like a startup company, but they developed the Dragon Prince for Netflix, which has become pretty successful now, and it's building quite a bit of a fan base. And we're actually building a video game based on that series as well. So
cool.
I thought it was a really unique time to be able to go to a studio where I could be more creative and be able to do modeling and texturing. and also be a part of like a small startup group and see kind of where the company builds and grows. And I just thought that was a really unique opportunity to be part of something small and have more of a creative voice in it. And yeah, it's been great. And I've gotten to learn Unreal and learn, real-time rendering and some game engine stuff, which I feel is also really important now, where everything's going with Unreal. So so it's been awesome.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So before we get to taking some questions from the chat, and my colleague Xander is already sending me through questions right now, I actually had a specific question that sort of curated to each of you, knowing a little bit about each of your stories. And I wanted to start with you, Alexandria, because I love that concept of, like, you called it like almost, you go to Gnomon, you're apocalypse proof. And that's a really unique way to begin your journey as an industry artist, to be launched into a pandemic. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us? Like, what are some of the qualities that you feel Gnomon gave you that helps you in this time, and kind of helps you work with less than normal circumstances as an industry artist?
Well, for one, I think the network connections of being connected with all of these people who are in the industry or are going to be. Like, I got my current job from being on the student council while at Gnomon, and the student council president hit me up for this position that she knew of that was being started by these people who she happened to be friends with at this game company. And I think it prepares you a lot mentally in general to deal with tough situations, because Gnomon is honestly the hardest thing you'll do in your life, but that's for a good reason, because you're just prepared to deal with a bunch of difficult things coming at you at the same time. Like, 6 classes is no joke. So you kind of build this tolerance for a lot of stressful situations.
Yeah, and that's so good and so true. I've heard our different education leads talk about how, at Gnomon we set a pace where you're working at more like industry level pace than just sort of school level pace. And that's so that when you get out there and you start working, you're not going, wait a minute, this isn't what I was expecting.
Yeah, you're not overwhelmed. If anything, you're probably more overwhelmed at school than you are in the real job force.
Well, and I love that, just like that, also the sense of confidence that you obviously have of, like, I know where I've come from, I know what I'm capable of, and I know that I can do this. And I love that foundation. And I meet that time and time again when I get to meet alumni from Gnomon. Yeah, thank you.
Gnomon is a really important word to have on your resume, because it's something that people in the industry whisper in between, like, it's secret, and it's power and fear of the name. So it's good to have come from there on your resume.
That's all. I love the story that's developing here. That's awesome. So let's see. Okay, Tyler, I had a question for you. So one of the things that I think is unique about your journey, especially for anybody watching from out of state who's not living locally in California, you moved from out of state to Los Angeles, which is a big deal. I think to come from anywhere else to LA is a big deal, because there's unique challenges that LA presents, especially just living here and getting started here. What was it like settling in and getting to know a new city, a new school, and make new friends while in the midst of this really intense, how did Gnomon help you, as an ecosystem kind of settling in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely really overwhelming, I would say, for sure. I was definitely pretty scared when I first got here, just that the city itself is just, LA is definitely a place where you have to have a car or at least a bike or something. But I tried to live as close as I could to Gnomon when I first got here. I lived in Hollywood for a while. And I think before I started Gnomon, one of the things that helped me was they had, like, back at the time, it was 2011 when I started. So I don't know, I'm sure there's probably better stuff now, but back then they had a Facebook group for new students coming in, to where you could kind of meet people who were starting in a term similar to you. You could kind of figure out if anyone needed roommates or anything like that. So one of the things that was kind of crazy was I actually locked down an apartment from Ohio. So I didn't even visit or see it first. So I was just, like, hoping it was nice when I got here. So that was kind of scary. But yeah, I think once I actually got to Gnomon and met my fellow classmates and started to become fast friends really quickly because of what we were going through, and just we had a lot in common. We all, love video games and movies and animated films and making art. And I think, like, once we sort of got to know each other and we were all sort of in the same boat, I had a lot of classmates who were coming from much further than I was coming from another country. So they were even more so, they were trying to learn English at the same time that they were trying to, take a class at Gnomon and get used to LA and all that. So I think we were kind of like all in the same boat together, which really helped by, hanging out after class and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Jay, I've heard you say, that you entered Gnomon with very little experience or knowledge of 3D.
Yeah.
And now at this point, you've modeled the Millennium Falcon, Star Destroyers, the Mandalorian series for Disney. I think, is that a Razor Crest t-shirt you're wearing, by the way?
It is.
Yeah, cool. Did you work on the Razor Crest? I can't remember.
I did. I won a VES award for it.
That's right. That's what you won that award for. So yeah. So you're wearing your work. I mean, tell us a little bit about what role did Gnomon play? I mean, there's the obvious answers, but I want to hear what's important to you. But like going from starting Gnomon with very little knowledge of 3D or no knowledge of 3D to like after this number of years, like now you're doing the kind of stuff that you're doing.
Well, I mean, it's everything really. I mean, when I came to Gnomon, I kind of knew about ZBrush a little bit. I had heard of that, but I couldn't quite figure out how to make basic shapes. And I opened Maya for the first time, and I was like, I can't do this. So that's kind of the point that I went to Gnomon, because at the time I was an illustrator, and I just saw 3D as a way to speed up my illustration, make my illustration stronger. Getting perspective for free, that light and shadow and stuff for free. That was kind of my interest in it at the time. But Gnomon really helped me kind of discover things about myself that I feel like now I feel they were obvious looking back. But one of the stories that I've told on like talks and stuff before is that a lot of people that come to Gnomon are interested in doing character art. And I went to school with this guy, Dustin Blattner, who was he already knew what he was doing. He could sculpt really well. And I kind of singled him out, and we're still good friends. I singled him out and said, I got to be kind of as good as this guy, if not better. And I can sculpt fairly okay, but it was like, at a certain point, Alex Alvarez, the founder of the school, said, I make the things I make because it's what's in my head. It's what I'm like doodling in the margins and stuff like that. And for me, like, I looked down at my sketchbook, it was all spaceships and cars, and I was like, what am I doing characters? And I kind of found hard surface as like this niche that I could be in. And I thought back to like building model kits as a kid and Lego sets and stuff like that. And like, it just seemed obvious, like, oh yeah, like I'm a hard surface modeler. I've always been. And Gnomon just kind of uncovered that and taught me all the tools to really do it. And like, I live and breathe it. I do it at work. I come home, I do more. It's like a huge part of my life, and I pretty much owe it all to Gnomon.
Wow. And yeah, I've heard you share that story before, and it's such a good story. And by the way, we recently did a really awesome event with you on our live stream. All you need to do is just go to our YouTube channel, and you can look at like they've created lists of past events, or you could just search like Gnomon J Machado, which you take us through a very in-depth tour of all the stuff that you like to do in your personal time, which was super, super fun. But if you want to take a deep dive into hard surface, see the stuff that Jay's working on, but I think the way you started that stream as well, and it was interesting to hear that when you first kind of got into Maya, you were like, I don't know if I can do this. I think the way that you explain Maya, the way that you explain kind of the essential principles of hard surface modeling, it's also really helpful at the top of your stream. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check out that stream, guys. Okay, so with that, I want to start taking a look at the questions coming in from the chat. We're going to do our best to get to all of them, or at least as many of them as we can, guys. So I'm going to start with the first one that's been sent through to me, which I think is a really interesting question. If you guys could have done things differently, if there's anything that you would go back and do differently with your time at Gnomon, is there anything, kind of being informed? And I think it's a great question from a student, like, how can I learn from, anything that you might approach differently during your time at Gnomon, if so. I'll let whoever wants to take a stab at that chime in.
I think I have one thing.
Yeah.
So in the demo reel classes, I took the 2-year program for modeling and texturing, and at the end of that, we had, I think it was 2 demo reel classes, and each of them were a whole term. So for one of those, we got the opportunity to an internship if we wanted instead of doing demo reel. So I took that opportunity because I thought it would be really beneficial to kind of start in the industry early and kind of get my foot in the door somewhere, which it was really awesome because I got to go to a place called Duncan Studio, which was a small animation studio founded by a previous animator from Disney. And it was a really good experience, but it was also like, it didn't necessarily it wasn't an opportunity necessarily for a job when I was done. And I felt like because of that, I had to kind of catch up a little bit after I graduated to sort of finish my reel because I wasn't working on personal projects at the same time because I was sort of putting my effort into the studio things that I was working on at the time. So if I were to go back, I might just pass on that and just concentrate on personal stuff because I feel like I would have finished my reel sooner and been able to start working earlier because when I did graduate, I kind of had a period of like a few months where I just like stayed at home and like worked to finish my reel right after I graduated. So
yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to chime in on that one before we go to the next question?
I'll chime in. I think if I could do things differently, I would have gone to Gnomon a lot sooner instead of just waiting and messing around at random colleges and online community colleges and UC schools, which just don't offer the same level of what you can actually accomplish here at Gnomon. And the second thing I would do differently is I'd have more confidence in myself as I went along, because you would just be surprised the kind of things you can do after just like 10 weeks of instruction from a course. And I also, like these guys, I had no 3D experience before coming to Gnomon. I didn't even know what Maya was. And I just didn't even think I was smart enough to grasp something as intricate as 3D modeling and anything related to computers. But now, I mean, I still don't know how a computer works, but I know how all these programs work, and I can manipulate to get really nice, beautiful renders of things.
Yeah, it's a hard question for me to answer just because I feel like the experience of going to college and then struggling to find work sort of shaped my personality. It sort of really sanded down that ego that I had at a high school because in high school, you're kind of like, maybe 2 other people can draw well, and you get this cocky kind of arrogant attitude that like, oh, I've got a special talent, and it's important to know that it's important to feel those kind of struggles where oh, I can't find work, I'm not prepared, I need to humble myself and improve myself. So it's hard for me to say that I would change anything. It would be nice to say, like, yeah, if I had gone to Gnomon straight out of high school and done the foundation courses and stuff there instead of like Cal State Fullerton where I went. I mean, I might have been a stronger artist sooner, but I probably would have been a lot cockier now. So I think it's hard for me to say I would change it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too, because the lessons we need to learn, regardless of what order we learn them in. But yeah, for sure. There's a big difference between being a small fish in a very small fishbowl and then suddenly being out in the wild and like realizing that you're not the only one that can do this stuff. We've got a question that's come in specifically for Alexandria. Let me just grab it here. Let's see. Taylor Williams is asking, what is the diversity ratio in the industry as a woman? What is it like to navigate mostly male spaces?
Well, it's improved a lot from the point in which I started in 2016 to when I graduated in 2020. Like in my initial term, there was maybe 3 girls and then 16 boys. So that was a little intimidating at first, but it's not like a lot of campuses where it's just like such a male-driven thing and you're like forced to compete with a bunch of guys who are just eyeing you down and waiting to put you down at any opportunity. I think it comes with the territory of being an artist, that you're just sort of sensitive to the people around you. You don't really think about those things. You're just like, I'm here to do art. this girl is also here to do art, I don't really care that she's a girl. We're just going to hunker down together and we're going to make some really cool stuff. And as I've said before, it's improved massively since 2016. And I'm looking at terms now, and they're usually like a pretty even spread between men and women.
That's great to hear. And I'll just say, you know, as I've been out, you know, tabling at, you know, college fairs and engaging students and stuff like that, I've noticed within the last year, often I'll be at something and I've had way more really like tenacious, focused females come up to the table and talk to me about their craft than males. Like I think there's a shift that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear you say that too. I think that's very encouraging. Okay, so another question. Let's see here. What, if any of you could speak to the differences between working in a really large studio? Like I know that a lot of us out there will think, when we think of our dream job, we'll think of usually a studio that's a pretty large studio, and you know, working in a smaller environment. How do those differences work out?
Well, I could speak on that. Just being at a big studio now, it's almost like it's a different pace, right? So a big studio is going to be smarter with their money and their time. They're going to plan things out. They have whole departments of people planning things out. So in a way, you have a lot of protection over your time and your scheduling and your pay and stuff like that. Whereas like a smaller commercial house, it's almost like a revolving door. Everything's fast and deadlines are really tight and overtime can get extreme. Whereas like a big studio, they're like, oh, we don't want to spend the money on overtime, so like, you know, let's schedule this out. Maybe we need another person, you know. And it's just a difference in the way things are organized. I mean, working on a film that delivers a year, 2 years from now is just different than working on like a commercial or a music video that delivers like in a week. So yeah, it's more of a pace thing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the other thing is probably specialty, because when you work at like smaller studios, usually you should be doing, I would say, at least two things probably to be able to be employable and like viable to work there. Because like Jay said, a lot of the time frames are so short. So like the modeling portion might only be a week. But if you can also do some texturing and some lighting or something like that, then they can keep you on longer, and you might be able to do more things. Even at Wonderstorm, where I'm at now, like they've opened it up and been like, hey, like we don't have a concept for this yet. Do you want to do some sketches yourself and like, you know, and then model it and then texture it, and like, so I feel like I have a little more creative freedom to do stuff like that, which is cool. But the unique thing about I think where I'm at now is they're doing their own IP, so we're not really at the whims of like a client or like delivering something on a really short time frame, which is kind of a unique thing. So usually when you're at smaller commercial houses like that, it is very much more fast paced. So yeah.
I can't speak for working in a big studio because obviously I'm in my first job right now, and I've only ever worked in a small studio, but it's not a commercial house, so I think that makes a difference in the pacing. Because where I'm at right now, everything goes at like an even pace. I'm never stressed out for deadlines or anything. And I think a perk of being in a smaller group is that you get a lot more of creative agency in the things that you're doing. And you just build a better buddy system with everyone in your office, I think I'm in an office of like 10 or 11 people. And you're not like afraid to speak up to somebody and your ideas are heard. Like I can go directly to my CEO and tell him, hey, I don't know if the character is going to look good with that outfit. What about this? My suggestion has like maybe a better silhouette. Maybe we could consider this. And I don't have to be like afraid or intimidated because we're all buddies.
Yeah, no, good point. So let's see here. We've got plenty of questions to choose from here. Looking through the list here. Actually, this is a question that will help I think, to touch on a lot of different questions that are out there. I get to talk to a lot of younger artists that when they hear about the industry, what gets a lot of the attention, right, is concept and 2D and painting, and then, you know, characters and all that kind of stuff. What would you say to, you know, younger artists out there, or aspiring artists who are really familiar with that, but the idea of working in digital production is a new thing to them, and they're just learning about it? What would you say about working in that world and working in the industry for someone who's just excited and looking for different outlets?
Well, you quickly learn, especially at Gnomon, that there's much more to it than just making characters or just texturing. There's lighting, and what's great about Gnomon's programs is they make you try all those things, and you might find something that you love and excel at that you weren't expecting. Like I know guys that really fell in love with effects and in effects classes and writing those kind of scripts and stuff, and you know, who out, you know, before knowing anything about 3D, I mean, I didn't even know what effects looked like. I didn't know what, I just saw Michael Bay explosions on this big screen, and I had no idea what went into that. So, you know, there's a lot of unknowns when you're outside looking in and you don't understand the full process of it, because there's every facet of it has an artist behind it. It's not just like you type in cool explosion into the computer, or you type in, you know, rig this character up. There's an art to every department.
We've got another viewer who's asking, it's an interesting question, and it could vary. What's the average work week look like for you? I mean, they're asking specifically about, like, how many hours do you find that you're putting in on average?
For me, they try to really limit the overtime. So most of the time I'm on a 40 to 45 hour week. But every once in a while there's a big trailer or a big push, or an episode needs to deliver faster, or I need to finish this asset in time for the episode to deliver. And it could go to 60. I think on Mandalorian season 2, I only put in one 80-hour week, but there was that 1 week. So yeah, it happens.
But they're more like sprints rather than you have to do that all the time.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, for me, it's usually pretty, right now I'm on salary, so it's a pretty typical 40 hours a week. We do have sprints every now and then where we're trying to, like, finish something, so it might be a little bit more. And when I was at DreamWorks, it was pretty simple, usually about 40 hours a week, no overtime. And then when I was at Disney, there was some overtime. When we were getting close to finishing a film, it might be 50, 60-hour weeks for like a month or two, but it wasn't too bad. But it also kind of depends what part of the pipeline you're in as well, because a lot of us are in modeling and texturing. We're sort of towards the beginning, so a lot of times we don't have to deal with as much of that. But I would say depending on what department you're in, if you're in like lighting or comp or animation, you're kind of towards the end of the pipeline, so that you're probably going to end up having a lot more overtime because you're going to be at the blunt end of it where they're trying to just wrap everything up and, you know, get everything done. So
yeah, it's very true.
Mine is a pretty standard 40 hours a week right now, and I've never experienced overtime, but we're still pretty far off from even announcing what our game is, and the release date is 2 years from now. So that could change, like, towards the end, when everybody starts to panic and realize, oh wow, we don't have enough stuff done, we should probably start implementing overtime. But for now, it's pretty chill. We do have sprints, but they're never like overtime sprints. It's just like, oh, let's set a goal for what you're going to accomplish in the next 2 weeks, and let's see if you can get to that point. Like, just challenge yourself a little bit.
Thank you. And one of our viewers is just curious to know, did any of you coming into Gnomon, did any of you start in the foundation in art and design? Did any of you get into the foundations course?
I did, I guess sort of, because I started when they still had the 3-year program. So my first year was all just foundational and 2D, and I didn't touch 3D until a year in.
Yeah. Well, and to dovetail with that, tell us a little bit about, because that's very intentional on Gnomon's part. Tell us a little bit about the importance of building that foundation that you can build the 3D on top of? How has that served you?
It's served me extremely well. Like a lot of the concepts that you learn as a 2D artist still carry over into 3D, like things, composition, shape language, prop design, weapon design, and it helps to be able to sketch out what something how it might work on a piece of paper before you start trying to implement it into 3D. And I think also what's important as well, especially for people who don't have any sort of 3D program background whatsoever, if you start out easing yourself into the kind of hectic schedule that Gnomon gives you with just doing things that you're already more or less used to doing, it helps prepare you for the 3D part where you're suddenly dropped into the space in which you don't really know what's going on, but at least you've built up a tolerance for strenuous work ethic. And that's also how it works in a job space, because you're not always going to know exactly how to do something. There will be like snafus that you'll get into, and it's important to learn not to panic and learn how to troubleshoot things and to just stay calm, basically.
Yeah. We have just enough time. I think we'll wrap with this last question. It's a good one. They're asking, what advice do each of you have for new students? And I'm going to assume that means someone who is going to be a brand new student at Gnomon, just starting out. What advice do each of you have for that?
I would say just take it all as seriously as you can. I was working part-time while I did it, and there were a lot of sleepless nights, but you have to put everything you can into it to get the best result out. So I would say, even the classes you're not super interested in, give it everything. Give it 100%, and you'll thank yourself later.
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I have to agree with what he says. Give it your all and go forth with confidence. But also remember that self-care is important, and try to limit the sleepless nights, because sleepless nights are going to happen. You can't really do anything about that. But don't burn the candle at both ends. Try to take care of yourself. Try to shower, eat well enough, eat healthy food, sleep. The whole thing. So you're constantly maintaining your body to be able to put through all this effort that's going to win you good results in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely agree too. You definitely have to give it your all, and you have to be super passionate and very hungry and really want it. But the other thing I think also is, I did have some classmates who tried to work part-time while they were at Gnomon, and I think they had a lot harder of a time trying to manage everything. Luckily, I was able to get enough financial aid that I was able to live and go to Gnomon without having to work. So if you can do that, I would definitely recommend that, just being able to put all your effort into everything. Because just managing all the classes and the effort and being able to create the caliber of work that you need to be out at the industry level by the time you get out of Gnomon, I think it really deserves all of your time to make that happen. So it's worth putting in the sacrifice to set yourself up for a good career in the end. Yeah.
Well, Tyler, Alexandria, Jay, thank you so much for giving your time to be here with us. It's the best people to hear from Gnomon about are our graduates. What you guys have to say is the most important information that we can give. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Wish both of you well. Stay safe, stay creative, and have a great rest of your weekend, guys. And with that, I just want to say to all our viewers today, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Gnomon and to consider Gnomon as an educational option for you. I hope that what our guest alumni have had to share with you, I hope that it's informed you, encouraged you, and inspired you. I know that I've gotten a lot out of it for myself. And with that, we will be continuing to stream more content right here on this channel. You can come back on Wednesday for our Art Jam with Josh Herman from 10 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon. As I mentioned, we've got another fantastic event coming up on Thursday evening. And we will also be continuing typically on Fridays at about Friday mornings. The schedule is going to be on the stream, but we continue to do more informational sessions where I have the opportunity to interview some great industry artists. Often they're alumni of Gnomon. Sometimes they're not alumni, but we talk to them about their journey, their process, and we couple that with an informational session about Gnomon, as well as we do some really awesome spotlight streams where we talk to faculty and artists and instructors working here at Gnomon about how they teach. So please come back. Please follow us on social media if you want to be the first to know about upcoming streams. My colleague Xander, I'm sure, is posting how you can reach out to Gnomon, how you can contact us. I'll just close by underscoring the fact that our admissions advisors are available to you. One of the best things that you can do, and what we hope that you will do, is build a relationship with Gnomon as you get ready to apply, or even if you're just curious about applying. Our advisors are the ones that will advocate for you and actually bring your portfolio before our review committee. And the more opportunity that they've had to spend time with you and give you advice and watch you follow that advice, the more they're going to have to say to our committee about who you are as a quality artist, but also as a person, as a prospective student at Gnomon. So please follow up on the contacts. Once again, my name's Adam Hartel. I want to give thanks to Jay, Alexandria, and Tyler for being with us, and to my colleagues, Xander, who's in the chat, and Miranda, who has been taking care of the production of our stream today. So we hope to see you back here at the Gnomon stream in the future. And in the meantime, everybody stay creative and follow up on your pursuits and passions. So thank you very much.